apart from that, guys, welcome back to another podcast. Today we're going to be talking about 5 nutrition myths debunked. I'm excited to go through this with you. I probably should have started the podcast off with that, but now you guys got the memo. So before I talk about that real quick, I might talk about this in another podcast or whatever it may be, but it was just kind of on my mind, and it's something that I just want to talk to you guys about. And I don't know, well, I'm sure everybody feels this. Of course, everybody does, but you ever feel like when you're like busy, like hustling, you're grinding, you're putting in the reps with life, and you feel so passionate, but like you feel like driven, you feel focused, you feel good like while you're doing it. And then have you ever had those opposite times where you just feel completely stressed, bogged down, and everything just feels like it just feels like there's so much resistance between like you and where you want to be. And it's almost like you were thinking optimistic and you were thinking like super like, all right, like it doesn't matter what comes in my way because I'm going to work towards my goals anyways, and I feel happy doing it. But then you have some weeks where it almost feels like you're stuck in a box. Like the stress just overwhelms, and it's like it's kind of like you're inside of a box, but the water's filling up to the top. And it just feels like you can't breathe. And it almost feels like there's like a breaking point in front of you. Now, I'm going to be real. This week, I've been feeling like there's a little bit of that breaking point. And I feel like, sorry, my texts are going off. I feel like there's always that breaking point. Like it doesn't matter the time in life that you're at. I know that I've been talking a lot about like mental health and like your mindset and everything like that, but it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner. It doesn't matter if you're someone who works at the gym, if you're someone who works in construction, if you're someone who does not matter at all. It's so easy to get caught up in that place where life ain't just rolling and it feels miserable. Very normal. Some of the things that have helped me a lot this week is coming back to a place where I'm listening to the right things. I'm doing the right things. Maybe I was doing a little bit too much and I need to stop doing that, and I need to be more diligent with my time and my time management. I need to relax a little bit more and just let go a little bit while still getting my non-negotiables done. I've needed to give myself a little bit more grace. I've needed to count my blessings. And yes, I've needed to talk to God. I'm going to be real with you. I'm not like super religious, but I do actually pray to God a lot, like every day, in my head, in the shower, before bed, in the morning. And I find like a lot of the time it just helps like center myself, because it's allowing me to express my thoughts, even if it's just to myself. So those are some of the things that have helped me this week break out of that mental funk. I'm not saying that I'm like completely out of it, but it's helped me get to, it's kind of like, how can you manage yourself when you have so many things going on? Another way to think about it is like, you can look at it like a task. And as soon as you finish this long drawn out task with whatever you have ahead in your week, it's like the storm's going to pass and it's going to be bright again on the other side. So it kind of makes it a little bit more playful, like a game, like a video game, versus it being so miserable. And those are a few ways that I like to think about breaking through breaking through hardship just mentally. And I actually searched up in ChatGPT. I'm like, I feel like how I just explained, like I was super optimistic, last week, feeling motivated, happy, but I always come to this place where I always find myself in this place and it's just so random where, like, for example, all last week, killing it, like, and I'm still killing it, but it's just like, I felt good doing it. I felt good killing it. Come Sunday night and then Monday morning, I had so much anxiety. I felt kind of nauseous in the morning just because I was really overwhelmed with everything on my plate. And then I was like, man, like, I'm asking myself the question, like, why am I coming to a place where I'm like so like filled with anxiety about work, life, and like all this stuff when usually I'm so optimistic and feeling really great about it. I'm like, what causes this stuff? And it's simply just due to stress. It's normal, very normal to feel that way. So it's more about like managing yourself during the process because the process is going to be inevitable. I was talking to one of my clients about this because he was feeling the same way, and he's going through a bit of something with a breakup, and I've been in that exact same position. And something that I told him was, I heard this quote from Alex Hormozy. You guys probably know who that is. Maybe you don't, but he's awesome. More of like on the business side of things, but it's just a good way to think. And one thing that he said was, business is a lot like running a marathon when you're obese, but the marathon is never ending and you have to lose weight while still running the marathon. That's what it feels like to run a business. And I cannot express how true that is. That's literally what it feels like. Even though if you're someone who's running a business, and even I know that I know you know that feeling, like it's ongoing no matter what. And there's a lot of waves where you feel like you're really high up and you feel like you're on top of the world. And then sometimes it feels like you're underneath the wave. A lot of the time, it feels like you're underneath the wave. But again, it comes back to how you manage yourself during that process. So that way you can just keep running because it's never ending. But then for anybody who's not in business and maybe you have a 9-to-5 or maybe you have, just a normal kind of job, you can still apply the same thought because life is never ending. It literally never stops. And so find ways to manage yourself to keep yourself happy. And a lot of the time I have found that a lot of those things have come back to things that make me happy outside of like fitness, outside of work, because those are like some of the main things that fill up my life. Like fitness is a lifestyle. It takes a lot of effort. Business is a lifestyle. It takes a lot of effort, but it's the things outside of that, the things that keep you going, whether that's counting your blessings or hanging out with somebody or doing something fun or, finding ways to bring yourself back. Maybe it's listening to a little bit of, Bob Dylan instead of your hardcore gym rap playlist. So that way you can just tap into a different mindset and think about life just a little bit differently. You know what I mean? Maybe it's getting a therapist. Maybe it's having someone to talk to. Like, it's about asking yourself the right questions to then figure out what the next step is to then bring yourself back. Because sometimes it's easy to like get out of that. And it is really easy. It's hard. It's really hard to pull yourself back in, but you just gotta try. Otherwise, you will be so far gone and you can be stuck. Yes, I just pulled out a nose hair for the people who are watching right now. My nose hairs are going crazy. It's so easy to let yourself slip into that way of thinking. But, while you're in that negative bubble and you got some shit ahead of you that you need to complete, stay strong. Keep reminding yourself that this too shall pass, because it will. You just gotta put your head down, stay the course, and it will pass. But in the meanwhile, there's a few things like I just mentioned that you can do to help, and they do really help. So let's get to the nutrition side of things. Completely different topic, but why not have some variety in this podcast? Myth number 1, the myth of calories in, calories out, and why food quality matters more than you think that it does. Let's talk about it. First of all, the myth of calories in, calories out. There is no myth. Calories in and calories out works when you're properly doing it. When I come across individuals who want to lose weight and they're not losing weight, every single time it is because they're not being strategic about the calories and the macros that they're tracking, meaning that they're tracking their food wrong. They're not inputting the right foods. Maybe they're in MyFitnessPal and they're just clicking the wrong foods that have the wrong calories attached to them, because in MyFitnessPal there's like a million different foods to search from. Even if you just search up one type of food, there's like a million different options. Calories in, calories out works. There's no way around it. If you starve someone, no matter if they have PCOS or any other thing, they will lose weight. Not saying that you should starve yourself, but inevitably, it works. I'm not saying to starve yourself, but it works. But the problem that I come across with people who track their food a lot of the time, number one, like I just mentioned, they're not strategic about it. Number two is that they think that they can fit in anything into the calories and macros, and they disregard the facts about actual nutritious food. Whole foods, literally the best possible way to base your diet around is eating whole foods on a regular basis, making sure that you're getting a variety of meats, a variety of vegetables, a variety of carbs is so essential to ensure that your digestion is running properly. And I see it all the time, especially with a lot of young men, they stick to the same, like, one meat the whole way through the week. They eat 3 of those same meals, and it's like they feel super crappy all the time. I also see the same with women, where they just don't have a lot of variety. And guys, it takes effort, but the effort's worth it. Your digestion is going to thank you. If you're talking about some of the best diets, or not even the best diets, if you're talking about like the best overall diet for digestion, for brain health, for your body functioning and performing really well, it's a diet that includes a mix of meats, eggs, a mix of carbs, rice, potatoes, oatmeal, even some breads here and there, a mix of veggies, a mix of beans or legumes type of stuff. And here and there, fitting in some of the other foods that are like Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, or McDonald's fries, or Kit Kats, or the other things. Good rule of thumb that always works is 80-20. 80% the good stuff, the healthy stuff, 20% of whatever the fuck I want to eat. And I'm not even saying every day, though. I think a good rule of thumb is like maybe once, twice a week, maybe a little bit more, have some of those foods. But for the most part, if you're tracking your food strategically, and if you're hitting your calorie and macro goal on a daily basis, and you do become obsessed about it to the point where, not in an unhealthy way, but in a way where it guarantees your success, which isn't a bad thing. That's also another big thing I've come across with people, is they're afraid to track their food, but it's only because of how they think about it. When you think about tracking your food to be successful with your goal, that's not an unhealthy thing. And I think that we need to stop normalizing that it is unhealthy to track your food very diligently, because it's not. That's how you ensure success. In business, there's things that you need to do on a daily basis very strategically in order to ensure your success. And if you don't do those things, you will not be successful. But the same also goes with your fitness. Myth number 2, why everything you know about protein timing is wrong. And just in general, there is no such thing as timing your meals. Like there is, in terms of results, like there is to an extent. when you're thinking about performance and when you're thinking about, like, I'm not going to say, well, I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea here. I'm going to rephrase that. Timing your meals is essential for performance, and it's essential to make sure that you have good workouts. It's essential to make sure that you are fueled throughout the day, but it doesn't need to be extreme. I think that it needs to be somewhat strategic. Like, for example, you'll hear a lot of people and they'll say, oh, I fasted and that's when I lost the most amount of weight, but it's because of the fasting, and it's not. It's because you were simply eating in a smaller time frame and you were just eating less calories. You were starving yourself for a little bit and then ultimately starving yourself even more just because you're eating less calories. That's simply the only reason why you lost weight. It's not because of the fasting. When it comes to your body losing weight, losing body fat, it simply, again, comes down to calories in and calories out. Starving yourself, but not actually starving yourself. I hope that you are picking up what I am talking about, because that is the truth. When it comes down to timing your meals, and let's just say also timing your protein, making sure that you're fueled throughout the day, having a breakfast, making sure that you have some fuel during the workout or before your workout, so then that way you aren't hungry. Making sure that you eat at least, maybe I would say 3 meals a day, maybe 1 and 2 snacks kind of thing, or maybe it's even just a snack or just 3 meals a day kind of thing, is essential. Like, essentially, when it comes down to fueling yourself, when it comes to timing your meals, you want to time your meals in a way that allow you to sustain your hunger. So then that way your hunger doesn't derail your day. When it comes to weight loss and fat loss, it's a really good sign that you are in fat loss mode, like you're losing body fat, is that you are a little bit hungrier throughout the day than normal. Not starving, but a little bit more. You want to make sure that you feel this way, because that's truly when your body is going to see the changes that it needs. And that's where I find a lot of people get nutrition wrong. Like, they do these weird, like, you need a reverse diet, you need to restabilize your metabolism and eat more. Every single time I've ever tried that with a client, they've never lost weight. It's never happened, ever. Every single time I get clients to make sure that they're slightly hungrier throughout the day. They might need a little bit more caffeine to use as a tool to help them get through their day just a bit, while still making sure that they fuel themselves. Guess what? They end up losing weight every single time. And it's simply just because of the fact that you can't beat starving a body. Like, you can't. And when it comes down to it all, you need to be in the right place mentally to be able to do stuff like that. But it's really not that difficult. So protein timing, or in meal timing, there's not a lot around it, but you do want to set yourself up in a way where you can fuel yourself throughout the day, especially for your workouts. You don't want to be hungry during your workouts, so then that way you have good workouts. You don't need to be super crazy specific about carbs to manage your insulin. You don't need to, unless you're diabetic, you should be doing that. But, for the average Joe who needs to lose weight, like, it's very simple. Very, very simple. Myth number 3, the fat makes you fat. Myth. How healthy fats actually aid weight loss. Fat and eating fats, like fats and foods, like fattier foods, that doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat is overeating your calories. The fats and foods are great, especially from meats, especially from eggs, especially from butter, especially from cream, especially from all these different types of foods that we eat on a regular basis. But it's the quantity that you have that matters the most, and that's what makes you fat. It's not knowing how many calories and macros to eat to lose weight, and it's just simply exceeding that calorie and macro goal that you should be hitting every day even if you miss that goal by one day throughout the week, every single week, your weight loss will slow down. Every single time a client of mine is assigned calories and macros and they miss it, for one day throughout the week, 2 days throughout the week, guess what? They don't lose weight. They don't lose body fat. It slows down. The moment they get strategic, the moment they just they double down on it, they lose weight. They lose body fat. Debunking the breakfast is the most important meal dogma. I think that's how you pronounce dogma. Breakfast is not the most important meal of the day, but it can set you up for success. When you have breakfast first thing in the morning, like for example, for me, I wake up at 5, I get ready, I shower, I come down, and I have breakfast right away. It's already prepped, it's in my fridge because I prepped it on Sunday. When you have breakfast first thing in the morning, it's easily out of the way. You're ready to go for whatever hours are ahead from that moment on, and it just sets you up. But it's not like you need to be having breakfast, because I know for a lot of people, they get morning sickness. It's just a lot first thing in the morning. So again, bringing it back to calories and macros, if you're someone who needs to lose weight, all that matters in the day is as long as you hit your calorie and macro goal, you're good. So, and it's just, all that matters is like within a 24-hour period. Sure, if you were thinking about your week and you zoomed out on it and you had basically like most of your meals at the same time, and you basically had, the same kinds of foods, the same amount of foods pretty much at like most meals, it would help with weigh-ins, because then that way your weight wouldn't fluctuate. If you had all that the same for weeks on end, it would make your weight loss on the scale more consistent and it wouldn't have as many fluctuations. And that's what I mean by that. But if you were to have, like, let's just say one morning you weren't feeling that good and you push your meals later in the day, of course, that next morning you're going to probably wake up a little bit more heavy than normal. But for example, breakfast in the morning is not the most important meal. How I like to think about it is like all your meals throughout the day are the most important. Because if you're not hitting that goal daily, off track. It does not feel good to be off track, so on and so forth. But, I get questions about that, like from a lot of people who don't like having breakfast in the morning, and because they feel sick or they're not that hungry or whatever it may be. What I always say is, if you have a weight loss goal or a fat loss goal and you seriously want to accomplish that goal, I think that you should, first of all, a lot of the time you feel sick from having breakfast in the morning because you're simply just not used to it. You simply have gone a long time without eating anything in the morning. Maybe you have some coffee or whatever it may be, and that's just what your body is used to. So when you have breakfast in the morning, a big meal that you got to digest, whatever, and you're not even hungry, of course you're going to feel like a little bit nauseous. You might even just have morning sickness for other reasons, and it might just be hard to eat in general, but it doesn't mean that you can't build yourself into having breakfast or having breakfast at some point as a normal meal in the morning. You could start off small and have something light, like half a protein shake or a protein shake. You could have one slice of toast. You could have half a slice of toast for all I care. You could literally, and then over time, it's about building on that habit and turning it into something bigger. Having 2 slices of toast, having a protein shake and a piece of toast, maybe then having an egg or 2, or whatever it may be. And then it's just about building on, and you could literally build up the habit of turning I don't have breakfast because XYZ, to having breakfast, but it just takes work and it takes consistency. It's just easy to think about. If you were to consistently fuel yourself throughout the day, of course you're going to have more energy. Why wouldn't you? It doesn't make sense. And then people come back and they're like, oh, I have more energy when I'm fasting and all this stuff. Like a lot, like there's a lot that comes down to that kind of stuff. But that's why, like, a lot of the time when you think about athletes, they're not fasting all the time. They need fuel because they're working so hard all the time from day until night. Like, you got to make sure that you fuel yourself. But if you're someone who thinks like that and has gone through like fasting and stuff, and you have had more energy, like I've fasted a lot and I understand what it's like. Like you do feel like you have like you're mentally a little bit more clear and all this stuff, but I'll tell you what, like you definitely don't last as long throughout the day simply just because you're not being fueled. Like it's just, especially when you're eating the right kinds of foods, there is a difference. There's less mental clarity, a bit, but you can perform a lot more when you're fueling your body. Your body's a machine. It's like a Ferrari. You got to make sure it's gassed up. Otherwise, it's not going to run as long as you need it to. Got to make sure you oil it. You got to make sure, you do all that stuff. Like the same goes for your body. It needs it. Not saying that you can't fast, but I'm just saying that the whole like fasting or having breakfast or not and yada, yada, yada. Like if we're talking about like the most optimal, like fueling yourself from basically like morning to evening and getting used to it would be the way, in the sense of like having the most energy, being able to perform, being able to blah, blah, blah. Like that's kind of it. But it's not bad if you don't have breakfast. But it's just, when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, it's not like, it doesn't make complete sense. Myth number 5, the sugar-free deception. Why artificial sweeteners might be worse than sugar. First of all, when it comes to artificial sweeteners, you would have to have a shit ton in order for it to hurt you in any kind of way. I'll tell you what though, if I drink like even a couple pops or whatever it may be, I notice it. Like my digestion, I notice a little bit. I notice a bit. And so for me, I just try to have a fine balance. Like I might have a little pop like every day, even though it's diet. Otherwise, I'm not using a lot of artificial sweeteners otherwise because it's not natural. Of course, it's going to affect your digestion, but doesn't mean that you can't have that stuff. No, you can, but just in moderation. Is it worse than sugar? No. Doesn't mean that you can't have sugar? No, you can have sugar. But again, it's about how much you're having that affects you. And now you're probably wondering, well, how much? And you go down that rabbit hole and blah, blah, blah. Well, I'll tell you what, like, when it comes down to how much you should have or this, that, it's like, I would not say that it's normal to have like something actually sugary every day. Like if you're having Kit Kats or ice cream or, actual like sugary foods every day, I wouldn't say that that's like healthy. And like you would definitely notice it because I've done that before. I've been like my own test subject. And you notice it, but once a week, maybe twice, not that bad. When it comes down to the things that affect our health, you have to think about it in the light of like, okay, I get it. It's not healthy for me, but it doesn't mean that I can't have it. But it doesn't mean that I should make my whole diet around it, or it shouldn't be like a consistent thing in my diet. Being healthy and eating healthy is very simple. Like, again, 80-20 is a great rule. When you think about it like throughout the week or like a month, okay, what does 80% look like? What does 20% look like? Well, throughout the week, 20% would be like maybe on a couple days throughout the week, I'm having some drinks or I'm having something like maybe like a little bit more sugary, but whatever it may be. If you're tracking your food, you should be hitting your macros. But it doesn't mean that sugar is bad. It doesn't mean that artificial sweeteners is like completely bad. And the way that you have to think about these types of topics and also these types of foods or types of foods that include higher sugar contents or types of foods or sauces or whatever it may be that include higher amounts of artificial sweeteners is like, how much am I having? Like, you know, am I eat like it, if you're having a couple protein bars throughout the day to make up for meals, like that's not healthy. What would be like a good healthy standard then for an individual? Again, number one, not eating sugars that are processed, like in a sense, like candy bars every day for the most part, like maybe 2-3 times a week you fit those things in or whatever it may be. But for the most part, like you're eating healthier foods that are good for you and that fuel you, right? So don't stay completely away from these foods unless you want to. That's okay. But if you're someone who does like to enjoy those things like me or a lot of people, some people like to, enjoy them more than others, but that can change over time. It's just you have to find a healthy balance for it. Otherwise, it can overrun your whole diet and it can make things extremely hard. So the sugar-free deception, why artificial sweeteners might be worse than sugar. Honestly, like I wouldn't say that it's worse. It's not. You have to think about it in like a broader scope. It's about how much you're having, and that's what affects you the most in a negative way. There's a fine balance between having sugar for enjoyment versus just overindulging and all this stuff. And man, if you're someone who needs to lose weight, who maybe has digestion issues, whatever it may be, take some of my tips here that you've just listened to me talk about like what more of a healthy balance looks like. Use the 80-20 rule. Be more mindful about how much you're having throughout the week, and don't, having it every day, probably not the best for some of these things. So anyways, I'll leave it there because I don't want to make this podcast too long, but thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to follow the podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, or if you want to hear me talk about a topic of any kind. And I wish you guys the best rest of your week. I'll talk to you soon. Much love and peace out.